welcome to another episode of Permission Granted. We are talking about feeling like a failure this week and how you stepping into vulnerability and using that is actually a really great tool to move through that failure feeling and back into standing in your power. So it sounds a little counterintuitive, but it's actually a really good way to do things. So what do you guys think about that? Have we been feeling like failures lately, ladies?
Yep.
Definitely. And you know what? Social media, sometimes it's great, but it's also detrimental at the same time, because for as much as we think, oh, we're not comparing ourselves, subconsciously we're comparing ourselves. We're thinking, oh my God, that's out there. That's what I was going to launch. So should I even bother? And then you start going into that that spiral of like feeling like a failure. I should have launched earlier. Like, is their idea better than mine? And then exactly like Shelly said, it's almost turning around and saying, you know what? I'm still going to do it anyway. I'm still going to show up anyway. And doing it for me, I feel doing it sacred and doing it scared has worked for me, knowing that I still need to show up as I am with no filters, because we all go through this, right? Can you ladies agree?
Yeah. I know I recently felt like a failure as a mom when my kids are growing and they're out of the house, right? And my daughter came to me with a huge, huge celebration in her business. So she's a photographer, and honestly, you guys, she's like defying the odds of social media. Never advertised, hasn't taken any online courses, doesn't feel like she needs to do any of this stuff. And everywhere she turns, she has business coming to her because she radiates what she puts out there. Like, she's just like nailing it, right? And so for whatever reason, in the midst of her celebration, as a mom, I tried to pull in practicality. Like, did you think of this? And did you think of this expense? And how are you going to do this? And this doesn't make sense. And she's like, that doesn't matter. Like, I will deal with that, Mom. And what I found out is I'm like, for a second, I'm like, okay, I told her I was getting another phone call. I'm like, okay, I got to pull myself back. So I actually called her back, and I was really vulnerable. And I just said, you know what? That was really uncalled for as a mom. I was celebrating your success, but for some reason, the mothering part of me wanted to be like, okay, you're doing so good, but I don't want you to fail. So I was trying to catch her on the flip side. And I thought, this is not my job to do this. You know what I mean? You love your baby so much, and you're so happy for their success, but yet in the same time, I was squashing it, like, for no reason. And I'm like, total failure. I could not sit in that celebration moment. And we did another episode that talked about stress, and I think my stress load was pretty high at that time. So instead of being in the positive, I maybe pulled myself back into the practicality, but it had nothing to do with me. So even parenting or mothering, no matter what age, I still feel like we can kind of feel like, oh my God, total failure moment. I don't know.
For sure.
Well, I mean, I feel like I often do that with others as well, but also with myself, when instead of celebrating, I will go into practical mode. And be like, okay, done, ticked it off the list, that goal's accomplished. Okay, what's next? And if you look at even the whole idea of manifesting and reaching goals and achieving more and becoming, what's like rule number one? Celebrate the crap out of everything, right? And yet somehow at some level I still have this belief system that I need to earn it, and that when I earn it, like, oh, it's not good to brag. Right? But it's not even about bragging. It's simply, like you said, Kim, just like being in the moment and just feeling the joy. And then you can always get back to practical. So it's vulnerable even to do that with yourself, never mind with others.
Absolutely. So for me, this was coming up really big for me last week, where I actually realized that I'm so afraid of failing that I sort of fail before I even try. I'm like, I have these feelings of failure in all areas of my life. And it's like this running theme. And most of all in, in my marriage and in my household, I just feel like I am just like, I wasn't built to be domestic. So I feel like I'm constantly failing in that area, especially at dinner time. Always overcooking things. Trust me, you don't want to eat my food, but it's edible. It's survivable. But
no one's died yet.
Exactly. I mean, it's not that bad. But I constantly, and I berate myself. Like, I just come down so hard on myself. And I thought, gosh, how can I turn this around? Like, it's such a running theme in my life. How can I fix this? Because I know I can't succeed the way that I want to succeed in my life and my business if I continue to feel like a failure about everything. I was like, how do I turn this around? And I realized exactly what you said. I never celebrate anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I never do that happy dance. I never get really excited about anything that I accomplish. And so that's what I started doing. And I also started calling myself out, because I realized that I was feeling like a failure, but I was doing it secretly. I wasn't admitting. I was allowing myself to get really angry about it. So, a couple times last week, I messaged my husband. I'm like, oh, failed again. I forgot to take something out of the freezer for dinner. This is my big thing. Dinner is bad. So between admitting it and celebrating my real wins and my real successes, I feel like I'm shifting out of that. So what do you ladies do to kind of call yourself out and to heal that?
I found for me lately, it helps me to heal when I show that authentic side of myself. That's when I'll get on live stream and I'll share, because I know for a fact that someone needs to hear that message, that you need to embrace your mess, but still show up anyway. You know what I'm saying? And be unapologetic for how you feel. But know that if you share that with someone, like if we have like our soul sisters here, when we have those moments that we're just like, not feeling our best, and being vulnerable about it kind of helps me heal, because I know I'm not the only one going through that. It's absolutely impossible that I'm the only one feeling and going through those emotions. And sharing that, and every once in a while someone will come onto that live stream and be like, yeah, like I was feeling like that too. And it kind of like not validates me, but I feel like someone else is also holding space for me, even though I don't know that person. So it's almost like that energetic, like I'm holding space for someone that may be going through that as well. I've started doing that more, like Shelly said, instead of like hiding my failures in secret. I feel like the more I share my true self with people and they really see that I am human too, things do happen to us, it helps me heal a little quicker than before when I was doing it in shame and guilt and doing it in silence.
I kind of pull myself back and talk about comparison to myself. So I'm like, I think if we could switch up the C words, you know what I mean? Because oftentimes I think it's comparison. So who are we comparing ourselves to, and what are we comparing ourselves to? So if I can stop and say, hey, only compare yourself to the last moment, only compare yourself to what your expectations are, only compare yourself in this given moment in time, that this is maybe the best choice that you could make. You can always switch. Like, whatever the decisions are or whatever is happening, you don't always have to stay in that spot. If it's your business, you don't have to stay doing that program or even stay in that business. You can change at any time. If it's parenting, what might have worked when they're 12 might not work when they're 23. It's okay. So don't compare yourself to others. Compare individual situations with yourself. So I try to pull myself back into comparison mode and be like, okay, who are you trying to be? What type of mom are you trying to be? What type of business owner are you trying to be? What type of leader in the community are you trying to be? Is it you're trying to be, or is it someone else? And that kind of snaps me back into reality and kind of helps release a little bit of that failure. And then just think about how I can do things differently and forgiveness. Forgive yourself if you've made rash decisions. Forgive yourself if your words didn't come out right. Forgive yourself if you're Forgive yourself if you're not the cook you want to be, Shelly. Who cares? Like, there's
Exactly.
frozen meals, there's cooks, there's your son can learn to cook. Like there's so many different options. Like what are our options, you know? So forgive yourself and find a new option for the next time.
Mhm.
I love that. Yeah, and for me too, it's remembering that all the ideas that I have came to me for a reason.
Mhm.
You know, even like I'm working on a book right now where I'm interviewing women that I consider to be thought leaders. I'm painting art to go along with it, and I'm putting together this, I guess, inspirational anthology. And when my girlfriend moved to another city a few months ago, she gave me a book that is pretty much the exact same premise, except without the art. And I was looking at my bookshelf the other day going, oh my God, someone's already written it. Like, how dare they? But then, you know, that other book was published years ago. And mine just came to me, you know, not that long ago. And I finally had the courage to say yes. And when I did some reflection about why I go to the judgy place, like comparison, definitely, Kim, you hit the nail on the head. I tend to compare myself to where I think I should be, you know, at this age, at this maturity level, at this whatever. It's very easy for me to do that. And I love what you said about comparing yourself, not to where you think you should be, but like to the previous version of you, right? Or to your expectations, and stepping back. The other thing I realized is I often will say no out of fear because it's easier for me to be just a little bit disappointed now by saying, no, that's not for me, than trying and potentially being like super disappointed if I should fail. And of course, I have had epic failures in my life, but then reframing that to what did I learn? Who have I become through that? And I was listening to, I can't remember, I think it was actually my husband and I were watching a movie, a really funny, like quirky slice of life movie on Netflix. And this old crotchety woman in the movie says, you don't make mistakes, your mistakes make you. It just like stopped me in my tracks because what amazing reframe, right? Who cares if I'm disappointed with the outcome that I thought it was supposed to be? Because if you just step back and look, right, the universe gave you the idea, it gave you the first step, it gave you the next step, it brought it all together, and it maybe doesn't look like the way I thought, but then it looks so much better in the end. And of course, hindsight is always perfect, but it's remembering that I have the choice in how to look at it every single moment. And I can look at it as that glass full, glass half empty thing. And so I'm really practicing the glass half full. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. If I'm just showing up, showing compassion for myself and my journey, then I can't fail. Like I just can't.
I love what you said about compassion for yourself. And I'm always comparing myself to this version of me that I feel like other people have, right? Expectation that I am this person. And when I don't meet that expectation, and this is a made up reality that does not exist for the other people.
Yeah.
True.
It just doesn't exist. But I've somehow created this, and it's part of this running theme of failure, where I've created these impossible tests and this impossible person, and I can't be that person, and I am constantly comparing myself to this imaginary creation, and it just doesn't make any sense. So for me, getting vulnerable and really just admitting it to my husband and saying, like, God, I'm sorry, I was being so mean. I was angry at myself. I feel like a failure. Like, that is like huge vulnerable moment, right? But that put me back into my power. It put me back into that space of owning who I actually am and tossing aside this idea of me that that doesn't actually exist. So that to me was, the most powerful thing. So
we can get away from, that comparison and really into that compassion and celebration. Like the minute we start to judge ourselves or feel like we're a failure, if we can be like, hey, wait a second, we made it this far. And if you're at a certain point, you've obviously taken action. So it's like, what part of those actions can you celebrate? You know what I mean? Like, hello, showing up for dinner every night you can celebrate, no matter what time it is.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that you guys brought up that are really good reminders. Like, be compassionate and just celebrate versus getting that comparison train.
And even like you said before, like even if we do get to the point that we did do our hearted, like best intention of what we could have done and we failed anyway, like Shelly said, like your intention was to remember to take out that meat for, for dinner, but you forgot and you failed. Who cares? Like, like the world is not going to end because you didn't defrost meat. Like the world's not going to end because you didn't launch last month instead of launching this month. And kind of giving ourselves compassion and grace to know that it's okay. Maybe there's a lesson for us to learn there. Maybe like you were talking about, Kim, when we had our other session about stress, maybe that's an indicator that we need to slow down. Maybe, it could be something else that's a teachable moment for us, not so much a detrimental moment. And that it's going to be okay. Like, who cares? Okay, so I did my best and I failed anyway. Who cares? I probably, if you really think back to your memory bank, you've done other things that you've failed in the past and you've been able to come through.
Every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Still
like,
here.
Make pancakes instead, right?
Yeah, cereal, guys. Cereal is very, very nutritional.
We wouldn't even have this computer. We wouldn't even have the technology we have without all the failures that came before, right?
Or electricity.
Exactly. I've been to Thomas Edison's house. I can't remember how many hundreds of times he tried to create, that's a light bulb, or no electricity, and whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
But you get the point, yeah.
And when we think about it logically, like how many realtors are there? How many different cars? Like, what is a car? It's a machine that gets you from here to there, to dry, and there's like a bajillion different cars, and all the car companies are thriving, all the realtors are thriving, right? There's a million doctors, so when we compare ourselves to where we think we should be, there's so much evidence around us of abundance and ideas that people keep just innovating and bringing the same idea back in. It's just, we are each here to have the idea and to express it in a different way through our own filter, through our own language, through our own set of experiences, because that's how we touch one more person. And so for me, the biggest trick is remembering that, because when you remember, then you automatically get back on track. But it's like when we forget, that's when we're all scrambling in the dark. But it's like, how do you remember to turn the light on for yourself? And that's where I haven't figured out the foolproof memory trick, but it's just, I guess, not getting down on yourself when you do forget, I think. So.
All right, are we going to do permission slips, ladies?
Yeah.
Awesome. Permission granted to step into your power, which is in your vulnerability. Do what scares you, and just know that you have survived every failure, perceived or otherwise, that has brought you to this day. So
permission granted to don't compare yourself to who you think you should be. If you're going to compare yourself, look at who you've been and how you've grown and who you are now and how much better you are now. And don't be afraid of the little disappointments, because you don't want to get to your deathbed regretting. You want to get to your deathbed going, oh, well, that didn't work, but I'm so glad I did all that other stuff.
Permission granted that if you fail, who cares? Get excited that you have another chance and another try to do your best, and don't beat yourself up about it.
Permission granted to celebrate your successes, even if they feel like a failure at the given moment, and forgive yourself, but yet let your emotions and feelings of that process through.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share away. This is how the word gets out. I'm sure you have a girlfriend or a loved one who would absolutely connect with this message. We all have feelings of failure. So please share away, and we will see you next time.